name is Sandra, host of Boss Lady Live, where I come to you every Monday night with experts to discuss issues of crime and violence, love and relationships, health and wellness, various different topics that affect us right here in Jamaica. Please like and share and subscribe. Click on the notification bell to be advised when you're on. See you then.
Hi, good evening. Welcome again to Boss Lady Live. We made it to another week, and this week we are speaking business. Hiring for success. So many times, we speak to people and they're stressed out about, their staff. They can't manage their staff. Hiring is also a biggie. How do you choose the right staff for your culture? How do you choose the right staff for what you want to achieve in your business? This evening, like every other evening, we have an expert in the field of hiring, and her name is Dr. Cassida Jones. And let me introduce you to my very special guest this evening. Dr. Cassida Jones Johnson possesses over 20 years experience in strategic HR, talent management, and people integration. Her last corporate role up to 2018 was with Grace Kennedy Group of Companies, during which time she spearheaded the transformation of the HR function to a strategic level while serving as the HR advisor to the chairman and CEO, and overall responsibility for the HR function locally and globally in the USA, Canada, United Kingdom, Africa, Belize, and the Caribbean. She has served on several boards and continues to do so, while she operates as an independent executive consultant. Cassida pursued her tertiary level education in the United Kingdom, where she attained a bachelor's degree in law and labor studies, a master's degree in human resource development, and a doctorate in the field of human behavior. She is a fellow member of the Chartered Institute of Personnel and Development, FCIPD, United Kingdom, from whom she has been awarded for exceptional service to human resources and people development in 2018 and more recently in March 2021. Welcome, Dr. Cassida Jones Johnson.
Thank you, Sandra.
my friend from when? I Absolutely. Often ask you, because this is one of my toughest areas in the last 26 plus years. I often ask you, whatever you get paid, you deserve it, because it's one of the toughest areas in business. Hiring for success, hiring the right staff, hiring this type of staff that will share your vision. Why would you have gone in such an area, Dr. Jones?
Oh boy. Well, Sandra, if you're honest with yourself, and if you go back in time when we were at high school,
right,
always had this tendency to be disciplining people like you and Nadine and Sandra. I'd always be the one who's on time, and we need to be in order. So I think from way back, I had that tendency. And I found a field that allowed me to continue to do that.
Right. You have, apart from Grace Kennedy, you have been in the banking sector. You were in the banking sector for quite some time, and you worked overseas as well. Now, what I'd like you to do is, first of all, tell us, how do you go about, or how should we go about hiring staff? What are some of the processes we should follow, and what are some of the, hurdles that you need to cross even before you decide on hiring? Because I know some of us don't really have any systems in place, so we don't even know what kind of personnel we need and all of that. Just kind of give us an overview of how do you staff a company.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Well, the first thing that you have to do, Sandra, is to understand the culture of your company. What does the culture look like in Totally Mail or whichever company it is? And then you look for like persons to culturally fit into your organization. So if a value system of integrity, transparency is a part of your culture, then you ensure that you recruit accordingly. And this is why companies go wrong. They don't identify the culture that they want to have. They probably have one now that it's not what they want, but what's your future? What does the future look like for your company? And those are the people that you search for. Not the ones that are no, but the ones that are more for the future. Process-wise, there are 3 prongs to process. How you attract the people that you want to hire, how you assess them, and then how you make the decisions about selecting them. And if you go through that process, of course, there are activities that you have to do. So even in attracting, where do you go to attract people who you want to hire? You go to a club, you go on social media, you put something in print, in the newspaper, where do you go? So where you actually do your advertisement is just as important as where you hire your people. So that's a question I would ask people to look at first. The second is assessment. Some companies do not have a standard assessment process. So you identify all the positions that you have and you ensure that however you are assessing these people, it's in line with the position. So not every position will have the same type of assessment tool. So you have assessment centers, and I think I mentioned to you some time ago about the whole matter of simulation. Especially as we've gone so digital, simulation is becoming more popular. And what do I mean by simulation? Giving people an in-tray or a like activity to do in the way you'd want them to do it at work and see how they manage that. Sometimes it's via a presentation, sometimes it's via an activity that you can actually watch. They can record it and send it to you. So in your case, barbering, do you have to have the person sitting in front of you to do the barbering? They can do a pre-recording, have someone in the chair, and they show you how they barber. And that is the new way of recruiting as well, working through the digital space. And finally, you have the decision making. How are you making your decisions? Remember, I spoke to you about this immediacy effect, Sandra, you recall, where you are interviewing. And you get into the room and you say, oh, my spirit, take this girl. I love her, see? No, Sandra, we have to have a process from beginning to end. All right? So be careful about the immediacy effect, as I call it.
So you shouldn't rush to employ. Don't just wait until you need somebody to find the person.
That's correct. You call it exploratory interviewing. Know who's out there beforehand, before you actually are in need. When you're in need, you're going to get desperate and you're going to skip the process.
But Cassida, when you talk corporate. What about the small businesses? Because
right now,
what we're talking about is when you have structure, you have an HR department, and all of these things. How can we, as small businesses, manage to hire just as well? Because I have you, so I have a go-to person. You know, I depend on you to guide me because, you know, as you said before, I work with a vibe. I work with when the person and me kind of gel together. But hiring is much more than that. How does a small business manage hiring for success?
A small business should consider networking.
Okay.
To identify people that you'd want in your small company, as you call it, an SME. You can't wait until you actually need the person. You ought to know who's out there. So if for example, someone is in your business, right? Although you focus on males, say it's a normal salon, which is unisex. I'm not going to wait as a small business owner to when I want the person. I'm going to know who's at Totally Male, who's at so-and-so salon, who's here, who's there. What are they like? How long have they been there? Interesting. I wonder if I give her an opportunity to be upgraded, if she would consider coming to me. Small.
But isn't that thieving style?
It's called poaching. And all companies, big and small, do poaching.
They wait until they're properly trained and then they teach them.
Look here, they go on LinkedIn, corporate companies go on LinkedIn and thief people, as you call it. Why can't you go to the Chamber of Commerce or the Private Association of Jamaica, or whether you're in Barbados, whatever the institution is? Why can't you go and network and find out who's who?
Get you.
Who's who list?
Get you. I get you. So you're saying that the approach for small businesses should be, although we don't have the tools that the larger companies have, we also have a way, a mechanism, a system that we can also put in place that is not expensive, or it can't be done. It can be done. It may take a little bit more time, and it may take a little bit more effort from the owners themselves or whomever they have employed.
Right.
Because, we have a lot of excuses as to why it can't be done the right way, right?
Absolutely.
Things in a hurry, at the drop of a hat, we hire with a knee-jerk reaction kind of thing. Many I used to be like that, to be honest. As you know, from in the early days, I've learned with 26 years of experience, you learn as you go along.
Right.
So in terms of, I have met, in my 26 years of experience, I've met persons who interview extremely well. But when it comes to the actual work or even the personality of the person, it's a totally different ballgame. How can someone navigate that?
Very good question. In fact, I encourage my clients now to not be the only person who is interviewing. You have to remember, they have to come in and work with a team, right? They also have to come in and interact with customers. There's nothing wrong with what we call like a mock run. So you don't hire them, but you bring them in the system. You have a panel of persons who you may choose from your team, your peers. There's the whole methodology of peer interviewing that some companies can do, whether small or large. But when you do peer interviewing, your own team members can tell you or pick up or ask certain questions that you may not think of as a managing director because you're not on the ground as they are. And they can ask those types of questions. They can see or shadow them to see how they actually handle a customer and give you feedback. And I think that's a methodology that I'd encourage persons to start looking at, where you have the mock system before you actually bring them on board. When if they don't get through, then you say, we're so sorry. The past 3 days, I hope you learned something from being with us, but we're looking for someone who has a closer culture fit at this point in time.
Right. So let me be clear on that, because I'm not familiar with that. So is it for pay, or is it like is it a part of the interview system?
A part of the interviewing process. So you might pay for the taxi fare or whatever, like a stipend. Stipend. Right? But it's really it's not pay per se. Is
there a standard time? 3 days, 1 week, 2 weeks? Is there a standard time?
I would recommend not to go beyond 3 days.
Okay.
Someone cannot pretend for 3 days, especially when a customer comes in irate or a customer wants to be rushed through the door and all of that. They can't pretend for so many hours. But you can vary depending on your business, though.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe 1 week will suit you. The managing director or the head of the company can always decide on what's best for my company. How long do I need to do a mock for to be really comfortable that this person is the one?
Okay. Okay. Now, is it recommended? I know, like larger companies, they shortlist. So suppose I have 3 persons on my shortlist. How would I then choose based on, could I still use that system? How would I use that system? Do I have one person working this week for 3 days, the next person for the next 3 days? How would I navigate something like that? Because, for example, even just recently, I had 3 barbers. One had, like, in terms of skill, barbering is skill driven.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so one person had a higher level of skill, but not necessarily the
Certification.
right. And the other 2 persons, they had the formal training, but the skill was on a much lower scale. In terms of personality and all of that, that was also there with the person with the higher skill level. But you don't know, it's still unsure.
Yeah.
Well, what I did, and this was based on experience, I just sent her to Hart to do the assessment and to get it done, rather than taking the lesser skill with the background, and then I would have to spend how many months training.
Right.
How does one choose what they do or how they do it in the initial stages?
Well, first you hire attitude.
That's me, yep.
And then skills come thereafter. You asked the question about whether you could use the mock period to do something like that. If you have the time, and it's not a rushed recruitment, you should do it, because you have to see how they interact with the customer as well.
And staff.
And staff, because especially in your case, all females, but in other companies, it's not normally all females.
Right.
You have to see where the synergies and the chemistry lie amongst the team. And that's so important, as you know, when you're hiring for success. Do not isolate them from the team.
Right. I have a challenge, and I've always had this challenge, and I know I'm not the only one. When you hire someone and the probation period is coming to an end, and you suffer from guilt to say it now work out, and you stretch the period and you stretch the period until the person become permanently employed. How do you navigate? I use the word navigate a lot because I hate confrontation, and I hate that kind of bearer of bad news. And I know many people have that challenge. So many times person end up in the organization just because you just don't want to give them the bad news at the end of the probation. How should one nip it in the bud before it gets to the 3 months? Because I'm saying sometimes, well, maybe they need some more time. Do you cut it earlier, or you wait to the period? You tell them exactly what you want. You guide them. You direct them. How do you survive the 3-month period without getting attached? I think because sometimes the person is sweet, and you want to work with them, and then they tell you what they have.
You're too emotional.
A helper, and they don't have a mate, and you get tied up in the whole thing, and you say, Lord, how we send her home because she has a family. And we're all guilty of that at some point. I know.
I agree. I agree with you. The first 90 days are extremely important, and I would recommend that persons be given the feedback early. Okay. So whether you meet with them on a weekly or a fortnightly or a monthly basis, make sure you're upfront about the areas that you want to see for improvement. As you said, we tend to wait and make a bad day, or no, let's give her another month. But you're not doing her any favors when you don't nip it in the bud. Before you get to the 3 months, even though you don't have an obligation legally, you really ought to give the person a heads up that, look, unless you're able to crank it up and really overcome these obstacles, I'm not sure if it's going to work out. You'll find that they probably will resign before you tell them to go. And I've had a recent case like that, where my client was very good at giving the feedback over the 90-day period, so that the person decided that I ain't waiting for you to fire me, I'm going to go, because he knew it was coming.
Right.
Because the process
So,
was
that helps also in the process. So if you don't have to belaboring the point, because the person has an idea that you're not meeting the mark.
Exactly.
Yes, I think that process definitely would work.
Right.
That process would definitely be better.
Right. Some people extend to another 30, 90 days, 30 days, 60 days. I have a client last week who was extended to another 60 days because of the nature of what it was, which was they were not doing a proper onboarding. Now, when we speak about onboarding, orientation,
right,
it's very important.
About onboarding. What are some of the things that needs to be done in the onboarding process?
First of all, you get all the paperwork out of the way early. You assign the individual to a peer mentor. So someone who's already in the system, knows the works and the ins and outs of the organization or a small company, so that they come up to speed much quicker. And if there's an orientation, do the orientation. In this case, my client was negligent in not conducting the orientation and the onboarding. And so when it came to the 90-day period, and they said to me, boy, we need to let this person go, I asked certain questions. How was the onboarding experience? If I were to meet with them today, what would they tell me? And that's when they sat back and say, you know, Cassida, we're really messed up there. So I said, okay, well, you're going to extend not beyond 90 days, but you can extend for another 30 days or a 60-day period and play your part in the onboarding as the managing director or the head of the department. And that's where I see a lot of failures on the recruiter side, where they don't follow through with the onboarding.
Okay. In terms of COVID now, because we're in a period that is new to everybody. Everybody's now online, persons are working from home. So what are some of the new, well, I wouldn't want to say new, but some of the important qualities now that persons have to be looking for in the candidates? Because not everybody can work at home. Not everybody is trustworthy. Not everybody has time management without a supervisor kind of having them on the clock. So how has hiring shifted in this COVID period?
Well, as you know, it's become more digital, interviews being online, and also even pre-recording. So, you know, doing videos and sending them in as a part of the recruitment process. So before you even get the one-on-one interview online, some companies are actually asking you to send in a 2-minute video that tells them about yourself. And then you might be shortlisted, maybe you won't be shortlisted. And then you have the one-on-ones. Now, I know that people will probably dress up here and not below. I caution people against that because of many things. Anything can happen and you have to get up because of an emergency, all right? Let's talk about the individual who's being hired and what I would expect as a recruiter. Your background effects. I would not encourage persons to use the background effects online because sometimes they distort your figure. So you'll find that sometimes your hair disappears or a part of your face disappears. Be careful about that. And also be careful about what's in the background. Recently, there was a company that didn't hire this guy because in his background, he had dirty dishes. So he was using the kitchen and they could see the dirty dishes piling up and they could see beer cans. So what they were saying to themselves as a recruiter was, this guy looks like he's disorganized. He also looks like he's a drinker and he might drink on the job, and we want somebody who's working from home, who we can rely on and who's responsible. So that's also very important as well. On the managing director or the company side, when you are doing digital recruitment, it's very important that you watch the body language in the interview. The distraction, if someone's eyes are rolling all over the place or you can see a flicker, it means that they're also checking their phone. Some people don't realize that. And in checking your phone, what's your attention span like? And I need you to work from home. So what type of focus are you going to give me if you can't even spend half an hour to 45 minutes in an online interview without checking your phone?
I see what you're saying.
Right? So it's very important to make sure that you're on your A game when you're doing the recruitment.
I know you have hired pretty much quite a number of different countries, UK, USA, some of the Caribbean countries. How do we measure up culturally in terms of, Jamaicans have their own issues, but how do we measure up in terms of the qualities, in terms of what an employer is looking for? And are we managing, especially the millennials? Now, we were sharing a video earlier just talking about how the millennials are entitled, they're not in there for the long term, they're distracted, their work, the idea of work is completely different from how we were brought up, where we would, looking to stay in a job for 15, 20 years. That is gone through the window. So how are we measuring it now? How are the Jamaican millennials measuring up now against the rest of the world?
They're not any different from the rest of the world, the millennials themselves. It's the same issue, mainly because of what that video said, which is that they were born with a phone in their mouths, so to speak, right?
Right.
All the phones, all the devices out there, that's what they're used to. So they're naturally distracted, and yes, their patience level is much shorter. It's the same across the world. However, what I will say is on the recruitment side or the hiring side, we don't measure up. We don't measure up because we don't have, our systems aren't as strong and robust like those overseas. And when I say overseas, I'm talking about Canada, the UK, the USA. They're more structured.
Yes.
Their onboarding process, it's almost like the DNA of the overseas countries. Onboarding is a part of the DNA of your experience. So they talk about the employee experience, right? So that's very important to remember. The other thing too, Sandra, is that in Jamaica in particular, some of the questions that we ask candidates are sometimes illegal elsewhere in the world and a form of discrimination. For example, you're going to ask someone if they have children. You can't ask that question in overseas.
Okay.
Or where they live. You can't ask that question overseas. Or you can't refer to their accent. So if you're interviewing someone and they sound like they come from another Caribbean country and you say, "Are you from Grenada?" You can't ask those questions overseas. They could be construed as discriminatory. That's where we don't measure up on the hiring side.
So is that based on training? Is that based on exposure? Is that based on we haven't changed from before? What would you say contributes to that? Is it that people need to get more training in terms of
It's a mixture. It's a mixture. Culturally, we like to pass in people's business, or for those of you overseas, or we're nosy, right? So there's a bit of culture there. There's also the matter of training people before they actually start interviewing people. So even managers in organizations, some of them are not trained. They just come into an interview and they start asking questions that are not pre-committed questions. They just ask off the fly. You go into the USA or the UK and Canada, the questions are pre-committed, so that you're very careful about not going into the space of discrimination.
Right.
Yeah. So it's training as well.
Okay. So what are some of the challenges that you would say Jamaica is facing right now in terms of employment? Would you say, because I look around, I had a show on I have never seen, I don't know, maybe because I don't read the paper every day, but I've never seen a list of jobs that are lacking this, for example, availability of the skill. So I was saying to the person, is it that, why isn't it that like Ministry of Education doesn't, or even PSOJ, why don't we send out a list to the schools to say these are the areas of growth, these are the areas that we need trained people in, these are the areas that we that are flooded. I find there is no, I don't see a plan really, a deliberate plan to be as a country. I'm not that widely read, but I'm just thinking from my general, from
Yes.
my perspective as an employer of 26 years. I don't know what areas are lacking, what areas are needed, what areas, how do the students know now
Right.
what's needed in corporate Jamaica?
Sandra, it's an excellent question. And in fact, the University of the West Indies has recognized that as a gap, and what we call is a workforce skills gap.
Right.
And they actually invited me about 2 years ago to come in and sit with them and some other persons who are out there in the corporate world who understand what's going on, to explain to them what skills are missing. And so they would know what degree programs to introduce, etc., and how to guide the students from a career perspective. So they would ask us to come in and even speak about exactly what you're talking about.
Right.
Very structured, but not many institutions do that. You started that process. I don't know if they've continued it, but I found it useful, and so did they. And coming out of that, they introduced some degree programs in what we call enterprise risk management, was a program that wasn't there before. And that's all about risk and assessing risk, etc. That is now a career based on having dialogue with the corporate recruiters. And I take your point wholeheartedly that other institutions need to do that. In fact, a place like the Jamaica Employers Federation, where they are in touch with the companies, they ought to be conducting a survey amongst the companies to ascertain what are the skills gaps that you are seeing in your organization, and how can we help to close those gaps? Tell us what you need.
Absolutely. Because I'm saying I don't really see that happening in my limited sphere still, you know. So that's why I'm asking you if that is something that is being done, because I'm seeing where, to me, the kids don't really have much of a direction. They're going from, okay, we want to turn lawyer, because those are the popular things.
Yeah.
But there are several other areas, and I was using just my situation, for example. There are so many spas in Jamaica. I would say in the last 10 years, there are as much spas as there are barber shops or hairdressers. And yet still you cannot find someone to fix your equipment. There is no company set up to fix equipment, to service equipment, to see what your needs are, to offer a service. You know, every 3 months come in and service the equipment. So every time something breaks down for me, I have to buy a new equipment, which is extremely expensive because you can't even get somebody to service it. So these are some of the areas. You see all these new areas popping up. Yet still you don't have a structure behind it to sustain it. You know what I mean? So those are some of the challenges that are out there that I think needs to be focused on in terms of the connection between school and the work.
Absolutely, and you're absolutely right. Doctors, lawyers, Indians, and chiefs. You know, there's much more to that. Remember now, UTech has the entrepreneurship segment of their program, which is so important because entrepreneurship itself is now a degree.
Right.
Right?
Right. How does one assess in this climate a candidate that is honest and is able to manage on their own, especially when it's not a seasoned candidate? It's somebody who is just starting out. How do we now hire new candidates that have no history, no experience? What is happening in this COVID period?
You do find that the graduates or entry-level persons are suffering more than anybody else because the companies are looking for people who are seasoned because they're now asking you to work from home. And the companies don't have the time to do the day-to-day supervision that would have normally happened without the pandemic. They don't have the time to teach you time management and all of that. But one of my clients, for example, they're actually recruiting out of the University of the West Indies as we speak. So what we decided to do is to set up an onboarding program where they will be partnered with someone who's seasoned for a period of 6 months. So anything that they're doing, they're doing it with a partner for the first 6 months.
Mentorship. Almost like mentorship.
Yes, exactly. But with someone who's not your level.
So it's like a shadow. That they have like a shadow.
Right, and it's all digital. So it's a matter of checking in every day or every week and how you doing, and then you have your schedule of activities. How are you doing with this task? How are you getting on with that one? Where do you need help? Okay, let me show you how I do it. This is how I do it. That's something that most companies now need to think about. How can I have that partnership with someone who is coming out of school, who needs that help?
But that again are big companies who have that kind of.
But you can do, Sandra, you can do that with the smaller companies as well. For example, you have what, 15 people?
15.
15, right? What's wrong with one of your longer standing barbers being a partner with a new barber who is coming straight out of school?
Well, remember, I wouldn't have that problem because most of my people have to be hands-on. The only person that something like that will happen with is maybe like my administrator or my front desk, which would still have to be there because the system is, unless I'm going to have offline access, and you don't really want to have offline access to your system with somebody who you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So you see, that is another thing, because our risk tolerance is very low. Whereas these companies can take a big hit, we can't.
Yeah.
So you don't know if the person is coming in to steal your customers to go somewhere else. You just don't know. So that is one of the challenges that maybe the small companies have, and we probably don't have that wide network of skill set to have somebody shadow somebody else. Probably it's just a little position I have, and the person either left or was fired, and so really and truly is really a replacement, moreover adding to the area. But I don't have an HR department, I don't have an accounting department, I have to hire out those services.
Yes. But what I'll say to you, Sandra, any position that you have in a small company that is sensitive,
yes,
money, handling of money, i.e. handling of data. Now remember, data protection is a law.
Okay.
Right? So your client's information, those types of things, you should not give access to those things too early.
Right.
Right? If you're a small company, you have to hold that up for a period. And you do it incrementally. Let me see how she handles X. And you see how that goes. And then you add on. But to do it whole turkey, I do not recommend that. You have to do it incrementally.
Yes, because it is a challenge. It is a challenge because I don't know, maybe it is a cultural problem because some people don't see like sharing a phone number an issue. Giving out your client's phone number or email address as an issue. I don't know if you find that to be an issue collectively. I'm not talking about from my perspective.
With the smaller companies. With the smaller companies, but the larger companies are trained.
Right.
One, cybersecurity training exists in the larger companies. I'm encouraging the smaller companies to do that because one little hacker can blow up your company, whether small or large. That's one thing. And then the whole matter of the global data protection regulation, which is when you have the information on your clients and it has been sent out without their written consent, you can be sued by the client. So whether you are a small company or a large company, it doesn't really matter. So the training of global data protection has to also take place in small organizations like yours. Your team needs to understand that, look, if you give out client X's email address or telephone number without their written consent, we can be sued and we can't afford to be sued.
Right. Absolutely. Definitely so. Definitely so. Can't afford it. Can't afford it. All right. So, okay. So we move on to image. So let's say you are not particularly with it in terms of the employer now, in terms of the new styles and the new way of dress. And so I have in my mind the 1980s and 1990s way of dressing and how people should operate in the office space. How the standards that I set for my company, and especially because it's usually a challenge, especially with the younger folks, because they don't see anything wrong in wearing like extremely tight clothing or something that they say works with their personality, that kind of thing. How do you have a employer-employee balance when it comes to the image that you want for your company, especially with the millennials?
Very good question.
So level is not an issue. We're just talking about the piercings, the tattoos, the hairstyles, the clothing, that kind of thing.
Actually, been there, done that. So, going back in time, yes, the traditional look. You remember dress down day wasn't, Friday dress down day wasn't around once upon a time.
Right.
You had to be dressed all the time, every time,
Right.
etc. Companies are loosening up a little bit, but let's talk about the earrings and the tattoos and the tight clothing. You have to identify the culture of your company again. Is your company okay with tight clothing? Or who are your clients? I've had tellers on the line who would be showing cleavage coming and I've had clients who have complained about it, that I was spending most of my time looking at the ladies' cleavage rather than looking at my money and counting it. You know, it depends on the organization. And then we're talking about a bank, right? Versus a salon, versus a manufacturing plant. So it all depends on the industry and the clientele. And then you have your standards accordingly. As it relates to earrings, yes, I've had people come in, men with earrings in their ear, and I've explained to them that if you're going to be in the banking industry, you can wear your earrings after hours. But when you come to work, I'm going to ask you not to wear it. So it all depends on the industry, Sandra. But every company must identify their standards. And when you are recruiting, that's where you need to start. Not when the person is now on board, you're going to try and tell him that I thought you knew that we wanted you to wear X, Y, and Z. How did they look on the day of the interview?
Okay, so there's a big hullabaloo in society about hair, that hair don't really, it don't really stop me from working. So if I want to wear locks, I can wear locks. If I want to wear braids, why can't I wear braids? That kind of thing. What is your take on the hairstyles and what is, because locks are now commonplace. It all depends on the culture of the company again. But is that discrimination or not?
Today it would be, in some way. The major thing is to tame it. If you have locks and you have to be in an area that, say you're working in a manufacturing plant and you're wearing locks, you have to, because you're dealing with food or you're probably dealing, so it all depends on where you're working. There is nothing wrong with locks or any natural hairstyle in today's society, but there are still some companies that are very traditional and they want to see the hair relaxed or in a bun and in a certain way. But I would encourage all companies to take a few steps back and to see what's happening today and whether you can meet people or you can have a compromise about how to wear hair.
But if, let's say, you can't really come out and say I'm not hiring because of your hair, because that is discrimination.
No, you can't do that. And most people don't tell you why they didn't hire you anyway, unless you pick up the phone and ask, can you give me some feedback about why I wasn't hired, which some people do. I would caution us to talk about, well, it's because of your hair. In the first world, that's a lawsuit.
Right.
Maybe not in Jamaica, but if we're going to emulate the standards in the first world, we need to start with ensuring that we're behaving properly. You do have more family-owned businesses that would be very stoic about what they want, and you find that the corporate companies are more open to some flexibility because they know that they're under more scrutiny than a family-owned business that may not be necessarily publicly listed. So it all depends on where you're working.
Okay. What about, you spoke about tattoos? What about tattoos?
Yeah. Tattoos, I've dealt with tattoos. They just need to be concealed. I had a young lady who had a tattoo on her breast, and she'd come in the office and we can actually see, because she had this cleavage problem, you can actually see the tattoo. And I remember one of my fellow executives said, look, I don't want to be talking to someone and I'm distracted because of a tattoo. Either they can put a concealer on it to come to work, or or to dress appropriately. I've seen people with tattoos on their ankles. They have tattoos. It's the way of today's world. It's just for us to understand and to have some level of standards. Again, if someone has a tattoo on their face and you're going to be on the front line, that's a little bit too much.
That's just a little bit too much. Especially if one of us call and all kind of, it shouldn't really matter as to what type it is. It's just really distracting.
It is distracting to the client.
It is distracting. It is distracting. Yeah. What about the Jamaican? How are we doing in terms of, okay, I know I have a challenge in terms of when I'm not taking somebody. Sometimes I forget to call them back, or I didn't call them back because I took who I wanted. What is the standard when you do not take someone? What is the standard that you should do? You should send them a letter of, I don't want to say rejection, but a letter to say we have selected someone else, or is it understood that if you are not hired, you just don't get a call back?
Oh, Miss Samuels.
It's a question.
In the professional world, we let them know that they weren't selected. Now, how you let them know is another question. Some people call and let people know verbally, and then they would follow up. Some people follow up in writing after calling the candidate. And some people there's these automated emails that you can send now. that basically says we have completed our selection process and regrettably we have selected another candidate who was more in line with our requirements. Whatever, we'll keep your information on file or on in our system, whatever. It's courteous to do so because, Sandra, you can never tell. This person could have been second in line to what you want. The person who you really selected didn't
work out
for a reason, and then now you're going to call somebody who you didn't call back in the first place.
That's true.
To your organization.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Guilty. Absolutely. Absolutely. That's a fact. You know, I just to follow up on what you said. I apparently interviewed this young lady. I would say maybe about 10, 12 years ago. I was looking for another candidate. Someone recommended her because this is now 12 years later. But when I interviewed her, she had just left school. And I really could not have hired her because I didn't have the time to train her. And she made the person know that I didn't take her and it's okay. You know, kind of thing. I don't remember if I did call her back or not, but it's the fact that I didn't take her the time, I didn't invest my time in her to up me up, you know. So I take what you're saying, and I think it is best to call back the person. No, preparing for success. Success will mean not only for the business, but for the candidate. Speak a little bit about how the candidate should ensure that the company also is in alignment with their goals. Because it's not only the win.
Of course. And this is where a lot of companies go wrong. They think, oh, they need the job, they need us. But we need the talent. As a company, we need your talent. So how are we going to attract you?
Right.
And so the candidate also needs to do their homework about the company.
Right.
I've heard people say, I will only work for company X and Y. All other companies, I'd never work for them.
Right.
And why is that? Because having done their homework, the turnover rate in this particular company is so high because people are burnt out. People are doubling up on jobs. They have long hours, or else they are seen to not be productive or they're not in line with the culture. So you have to do your homework as it relates to the culture that you feel you can work in. Do you want a culture that allows flexibility so that I can have flexi time arrangement or I can have remote working? What do you want, in that company? Do your homework.
At the point of interview, is it too early to ask some of those questions?
Absolutely not. Let me give you an example of a young lady who will remain nameless because she's quite popular in the world.
Yes.
She came to interview and she asked this question about working hours. And at the time it was 8 a.m. to 4:30. And her body, she just slumped. So I asked, is there a problem? And she says, I had to ask that question because I play squash in the mornings before I go to work. And I need to work, she was very bold, I need to work with a company that will allow flexibility so that I can come in at 11. I work late, I work very late, but I need my mornings to go to squash, go home, wash the hair, and then come to work. So she was clear about the fact that she wasn't joining us.
Yes.
And we were clear.
Because you didn't have flexi time at the time.
No, we didn't have flexi time at the time. So she was like floored. Right? So what is it that you want? How you want to work? When you want to work? I said to you some time ago about the whole matter of hybrid working. Some people don't want a full-time job anymore, especially since the pandemic, and people have gotten accustomed to being at home and probably being able to take their kids somewhere and come back. Companies need to now start looking at job sharing, which is a very popular activity in the UK, where you don't have one person doing the job. but you split it half and half, especially if you can have that transition. Because candidates they want to work differently.
Right.
We need to keep up.
But so you agree on the amount of days they will, or hours they will give you per day, or how does it work exactly?
It depends on what you want to do, because there are different types of work practices now. You have the atypical, which is I want to be a freelancer who is able to work with other companies. So I don't want to be exclusive to you. No, you may negotiate and say, okay, but not a competitor. I don't have a problem with you working with other companies, but not with another salon in your case, right?
Right, right.
And then you have I mentioned the job sharing, which is another type of practice. You also have outsourcing. So everything doesn't have to be done by you internally, but can you outsource, for example, payroll? Is payroll the same thing over and over? Do you have to do it? Is it more cost effective to have someone do that for you? So people might even take that on as a job opportunity when you outsource to them.
Right.
And that's what I mean by companies needing to look more at that and not relying on the traditional way of working, because candidates are not looking for that flexibility.
Do you think we will revert to what was our old norm, or you think it's going to escalate to more, as you say, of a hybrid kind of setup? You think we'll go back to the 9 to 5 full staffing in that kind of setup?
No. You know why? Because companies are realizing that they can save quite a bit. Remember all those buildings? Let's talk about Usain Bolt's building on Halfway Tree Road, which would have been there for companies to rent office space, etc. So you might find that your square footage has changed. You don't necessarily need to have the large square footage that you had before. Or if you own the building, you can now rent and get income in other ways. So companies are looking at positions that no longer need to come back into work, right? And revisiting your contract, your terms of conditions of work, terms and conditions of work, rather.
Right.
Because they've realized that they can save money in this new way of work. Why would you want to go and add to your costs? Because you want to go back to the traditional way of work. And plus, the millennials will be the leaders in the next 5 to 10 years of companies. Because the oldest millennial is now 41. So in 10 years' time, a person will be 51. They'll be leading, and they will not want to go back to this traditional way of work.
Absolutely. I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying. So what are some of the give us some advice, or should I say those out there who are looking for a job that suits their goals, not necessarily financial, but lifestyle, whatever their plan is, whether they want to be retired at 45. What are some of the nuggets, or what some of the advice that you would give them in terms of when seeking employment at this time?
Right, a very good question. You have to do assessment of your needs and your wants and your goals, as you mentioned. So your needs are you need to meet your basic requirements on a daily and monthly basis. And then what is that you want as an individual? Are you family oriented?
Yes.
Or are you you think you'll be single for the rest of your life? Do you want to travel? What do you want to do? Do you want to be a volunteer? Do you want to go into philanthropy like you? How do you want to spend the rest of your life? And then you look at what organization falls in line with how you would like to spend the rest of your life. Will they allow you sabbaticals? Some companies allow you to go off for all 3 years and come back. because you might want to climb Mount Everest and come back.
But will they hold your position for that period? Or when you come back, you may not have that position anymore?
No, they can't. In today's world, you can't promise the same position because the world is so dynamic. Anything can change.
It's a risk.
Yeah, it's a risk that you take. You may come back to something else. And this is why you have to also be more multidisciplined, because you may have been in a particular position for a particular period, but if that's all you can do, then you might be in trouble, right?
Yes.
Learn another skill because you don't know what you're coming back to.
Shelley Walker says, hoteling may become more popular now, meaning you make a reservation for the days you want to come into the building. Permanent desk space would no longer be necessary.
That's right. So you have what we call
I see a lot of companies popping up, offering renting office space with all the amenities. So you can rent space for hours.
And that's what I'm talking about, where the traditional company can now cut their costs because of what we call the multi-site hubs. What Shelley Walker is talking about are site hubs.
Right.
So I need 4 hours in an office. I need Wi-Fi and I need X, Y, and Z. I'm going to rent so and so. In fact, some people have businesses and they have an address and everything, and it's based on a place that they've rented for a period. That's very popular in the US.
Right.
You don't really work there. You just rent a space. You meet with your clients, and then you move on.
Right.
That's a good business to be in.
I noticed a lot of people are renting just office space, everything to your all the amenities are there. Printer,
office station, everything.
You can get everything there. I noticed, and I said quite a few popping up around the place. Nadine says, so true. People are reevaluating their lives since the pandemic. They are no longer willing to get up and get dressed to go out to work and leave their family for long hours. They have gotten used to bringing home. They have gotten used to coming home. Brick and mortar, don't know. Work from home is a winner for everybody. But then there is another side to it. Working allows you, or going out to work allows you to network, to socialize. If you're having a hard time at home, you can get a break at work, out in the workforce. So when you hire someone, they might seem stable and everything, but then if at home is not happening, then what happens to that worker? The productivity productivity go down, and how you're no longer seen. I mean, if I start coming now and the face long, I can look and I say, Jackie, why is face, or Laverne, why is face so? Why face so? Come talk to me in my office now. What's gonna happen to that immediate not touchy feely, but that
human touch.
That human touch or human contact, so that I can identify when something is going wrong. Aren't we? Isn't that a risk?
It is a risk, and companies are already facing that problem, Sandra. It's not even in the future, it's happening now.
Right.
You'll find that the younger folks are struggling with dealing with the lack of social interaction than the older folks, right? I have a client who, her people just don't check in. You call their phone, you can't get hold of them, you just cannot find them, and they shut down, literally, psychologically they shut down. And it's, how do we have what we call the Employee Assistance Program, the EAP, whether you have a psychologist who is available to them, who they can speak to, or even do a chat with, because some of them may not want to speak one-on-one. What mechanisms have you put in place to allow these persons to have an outlet other than home? Because as you said a while ago, sometimes their issues are at home. So what's their outlet? Their outlet is through what we call the EAP, the Employee Assistance Program. Also, as managers, the check-in points are very important. And what do I mean by that? You can also check in on digitally. You can have social events online now. Sandra, you know that.
Yes.
You had your Zoom party and it went on till after midnight, right?
Exactly.
You can do the same thing for the workplace, where you have your social events online. You can play games online, etc., to keep people feeling that they have a connection with their peers who they may not have seen for a long time. So it's using up the technology.
But does the HR department operate in the same way now as they used to when persons were in the office?
Some HR departments have a lot of room for improvement, I can tell you that. Some HR departments have actually made the quantum leap and gone very digitally. They've set up games for game nights and so on for the staff to come on digitally, but there are still some that are operating very traditionally and insisting that people come into office. Some are not making that paradigm shift.
Right.
And in doing so, you're going to lose your people.
Right. Okay, so Nadine says companies might now rethink childcare, or we didn't even talk about that, the aspect of even the kids being at home, because that's another juggling. How do they manage their work and having the kids online and having to supervise the kids online? All of that, I mean, it breaks your concentration, because 9 times out of 10, the kids come first.
Yes.
So I don't even know. I mean, I don't even know how corporate manage right now. I don't know how they're managing, because there's just so many elements to managing right now, and the pressure on the parents to have, I mean, so many moving parts at the same time, because it's all happening during the same hours.
It is. But the corporate entities are struggling with solutions, but the parents are more finding the solutions than the corporate entities as we speak. And I'll give you some examples of that. There are some parents who actually have the space at home to accommodate other children. So what they've done, they've taken turns to say, okay, Sandra, I have a board meeting and I can't afford to hear Damien in the background screaming. So I'm going to ask you to do the oversight on Monday and Tuesday, right? And I have a space around the back. We can bring the kids together, we do our social distancing, and we make sure that they do their homework or whatever they have to do. Parents are finding their solutions. I'm encouraging companies to chime into those solutions as well, in order to make sure that their people are still productive. Because as you said, there's no choice. You have to pay attention to your kids whilst working.
Right. What you said, companies might now rethink childcare at their companies if they want employees to come back to a building. But as you said, we may not be going back to the building. A balance or integration with hybrid helps. Marsha Ann is saying that a balance or an integration with the hybrid definitely helps.
Right.
Iva Johnson says, hi, Dr. Johnson. What are your views on psychometric testing, and which ones can you recommend?
Psychometric testing is, some companies don't believe in them, and some companies, they don't move without them. There is one that is by Thomas. I don't know if anybody knows that one, but there's the Thomas is out of the UK. It's normally fairly accurate. It focuses on behavioral, as you know. So you can look at the Thomas one. There are a couple, I don't know if this person is overseas, but in Jamaica, there are 1 and 2 persons who I know who provides that service. They specialize in it. I can give it to you offline, Sandra, and you can pass it to the individuals.
Yes,
if they're in Jamaica. But if they're outside of Jamaica, look for THOMAS. They have a very good psychometric testing solution.
Also, Shelley was saying the social component of working has now been interrupted. Yep.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Marsha Ann says, was a vital party. Sandra, you can model the party vibe. Okay, so Daniel says the outlet and socialization is important. People need a change of environment as well. Juggling parenting and working at the same time. Single parents certainly have a challenge, especially if they have 2 or 3 children.
Yes, absolutely. And she's absolutely right. There is one company that met at Hope Gardens recently. Because, you know, Hope Garden is wide, you can spread out. And it's just finding ways in which you can still go out and meet people in an open space rather than in the office.
Ava Daly says some folks need interpersonal interaction. Love the workspace. I don't. I hope not to work in office ever again. Don't here in Atlanta, or she's in Atlanta. Park, walk into building, take 2 elevators, plug in, blah, 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 blah. Don't miss it. They have time also saved based on persons working from home. So is that an advantage, or do you see that advantage bleeding over into the workspace? Or people utilize that time in other ways?
You know, unfortunately, people are extending their hours on the same work. It's amazing. So even though they've cut down the travel time to and from work, because they're at home, they're spending more hours working than they would have if they were commuting, which is very unfortunate.
Yeah, I'm hearing people saying that they're working more. No,
they're working more hours. Yeah, because you might have some flexibility in what time you wake up tomorrow morning, because you don't have to wake up at 6 to drop the kids to school and then you to get to work at 8 or 9. So you're now saying, all right, I'm going to sleep late. But then on the other end, you work extensive hours.
Right. And they're all agreeing with you. Shireen says you work way more hours working from home. Work never ends. And Shelley Walker says yes, for sure.
But you know what's missing, Sandra? We do not have when do we find time to exercise?
Right.
We will, you know,
work-life balance.
Absolutely. You now have time to exercise. Marva just said, is Marva her name is? Daily?
Ava.
Ava just said that she doesn't have the commuting. But what has Ava done? What has taken the space of not commuting? I'd love her to answer that question.
Ava, let us hear from you. Let us find out what have you done with the additional time that you have saved from taking the elevator, which when you should really have been taking the stairs.
Absolutely.
Let us hear from you, Ava. What have you done with your extra hours? Shelley, why are you overworking? Shireen, what is happening with the exercise? Nadine says, what am I going to do with the extra fat? Okay, so all right, so as we wrap, is there anything that you really want to get out there? Oh, Ava says, huge advantage for some folks without children and or elderly parents. I work part-time, so I go and help my single parents' children with their schoolwork. So she is sharing her time with single parents, with their children. So she's helping out.
Yes.
But don't forget yourself, Ava. Don't forget yourself.
Absolutely.
Because the mental state, I mean, everywhere you go, you hear people talking about depression. You know, they're unhappy. They're not socialized. They're lonely. You know, that kind of thing. So that is also a big challenge with the work from home. And then if you're someone that have, more than 2 children, you can't get a break because they're constantly on it. Children don't work. It's not that mommy or daddy need some time for themselves. They see you there and you have to find something for them to eat every minute. I mean, that's the biggest complaint I hear, that people are being eaten out of house and land, right? Kids will eat non-stop around the clock. But
that's boredom, Sandra. The kids are not being able to socialize out there. So they replace it with food, which I'm going through that as well. Right.
You need to set up a structure, just like how the child would be at school. You probably need to set up a structure for activities, for school, and all of those things, so that you kind of keep it as normal. Set up, well, maybe you kind of have a safe space where you have like play dates, so you only keep it in a small circle. But you have like play dates where, they can, at some point, with proper social distancing measures, have some kind of interaction, because it's taking a toll on adults and kids.
Right, and it's affecting productivity because companies are complaining that they're not hearing enough from their people at home.
Yes.
Yes.
All right, so is there anything that we haven't touched that you think is important in terms of during this time of, 1, looking for work, and 2, hiring as an organization?
Yes, on the side of looking for work, flexibility is very important. Being self-sufficient. So use this time to understand the whole matter of doing it without an assistant. A lot of people became accustomed to having someone always there, being there for them. Self-sufficiency is one of the things that a company is now looking for. And they're going to ask you about all of the digital devices and digital technology. How can you do X? Can you do Y? Do you know how to do A, B, and C? Get up to speed with those things that are now required in the workplace. Learn another skill as well. Think of another career and another profession. Do not stay on course in the same way that you did traditionally, because things are changing under our feet.
Buzzword, pivot.
Absolutely, pivot. Pivot. Now is the time to pivot, and to also think of, how do I want to spend the rest of my life, because it's not going back to normal. It's not. On the side of the recruiter, the whole matter of even looking at what does return to work look like for the recruiter. I'm encouraging recruiters to look at their return to work policy and to do some research around even that people being inoculated. There's a lot of debate around that, and you're going to stand up as an employer of choice when it comes to return to work, right? Spend some time on that. Right now, I'm working with a client to look at a return to work policy so that they become a stronger employer of choice. Right?
I'm an advocate. I've always been an advocate. You know me. I am doing what I love. But having you here, I can't let you leave. Talk to someone who has found themselves in a situation where they are doing a job that their parents wanted them to do.
Oh my gosh.
And so they are going to work every day, heavy. Talk to them about making that shift. How do they go about it? Should they go about it? Is it too late to go about it? When is it too late to go about it? Speak to them about living, first of all, living in a vocation that makes you happy, and 2, finding out what it is that you really want to do. What is your sweet spot? Speak a little bit about that person that has found themselves in that position.
All right, well, let's talk about those of us who are parents. And those of us
there you go. That's where it starts.
Those of us who are parents, I say if you wouldn't be a millennial, you probably would be like a Generation Xer or a baby boomer. Yes, there's a tendency to want our kids to be doctors, lawyers, or some CEO out there.
Or something that you wanted to do that you didn't get
absolutely, and that is
so you want them to do it.
Oh, absolutely, and that happens very often. I had a friend who said to me, who will remain nameless, no child said to youngster, she was at the time like 17, and she said to my mother wants me to be a lawyer. So I asked her, I said, so what do you want to be? She says, I don't know, because if I don't be a lawyer, mom is going to be upset. Right? So she went through law school, and you could see her eyes weren't shining. There was no passion coming out, and she's just going through the motion right now at a law firm. Very unhappy, right? So parents, I say to you, you lived your life, you made your choices. Sometimes you probably couldn't help it, but do not live vicariously is the word. Do not live vicariously through your children. Allow your children to do what makes them feel good. The best type of job is one that you feel like you're not even working.
Absolutely.
You might be getting paid for it, but you're not really working.
Right.
You know, the way I charge my clients now, I go way over the hours sometimes, but I'm so involved and passionate about
it.
Yeah, I want them to do well. That I'll say, don't worry about that. It's all right. I'll do it. Okay?
Right.
Do it. That's how you're supposed to feel. And that's when you know that you're in your sweet spot. So for those kids who are doing medicine and law and accounting and engineering, because that's what your parents want you to do, take a step back and make sure that when you're doing it, do you have that spark in your eyes? Do you have that fuzzy?
And know that there's no shame in switching to something lesser if that's what makes you happy. Absolutely. If you don't want to be a doctor and you want to be, let's say for argument's sake, what would they say? Let's say you want to be a nurse. You don't want to be a doctor. You want to be a nurse. But a nurse in a specific area, like a theater nurse or whatever.
Nurse or whatever.
Nurse or whatever. Or a dentist or something else. Know that, you see, a lot of us are really afraid to disappoint our parents. It's a hard decision to make. Even when we're 50 and 60. That is the truth.
Yes.
But at some point, you have to be able to sit down with your parent and say, look, mom and dad or whomever, this makes me happy. I need to do this for me.
Absolutely.
I have done this for you. And then take a decision, because you're the only one who is living your life.
Absolutely.
You know, I remember doing my 9 to 5 when I was at IGL.
I remember.
I gave my 100% because I know it was in the meantime. And that's another thing. Some of us are in jobs, started out as in the meantime, and it became our careers.
And they're complaining. And they complain year over year. Absolutely. Because
you just can't bother switch. We don't know this already. It's going to take too much. If it requires going back to school, if it requires learning a skill, I've seen persons at the top of their game leave their 6-figure jobs to go and do massage therapy or yoga instructor or Pilates instructor, because that's what gave them
the joy.
The joy.
Absolutely.
Which really and truly nothing else really matters. Because if you're going for a job that gives you nothing, what's the point? What
And you
is the
see it in their eyes, you know, Sandra. You see it in their eyes, even in the workplace. You
yes.
see it. They don't want to be
No,
there.
would that be on HR to have that conversation? Because I've had a similar situation to that, as you know, where I had a staff member who she was excellent. Excellent is an understatement. She was excellent at what she did, but she did not want to do that because in her mind, her family thought it was less than. So she wanted to work in an office setting, working behind a desk, doing something that she had absolutely no skill for, absolutely no interest in, but on paper and the image of it looked good.
Yeah.
I don't understand. And me as a supervisor or a manager, I really, as much as I wanted to support her dream, well, what she called her dream, I knew it was not her dream.
Yes.
She was not doing it for herself.
For her. Absolutely.
And so I could not have entertained that trajectory because I know it would not have been, there would have been no longevity or no happiness.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
But sometimes you have to allow people to do what they think is right, and then they kind of right size themselves.
Right. Yes, exactly.
But is that a role of HR?
To some extent, from the recruiting point. So if we go back to hiring for success,
Right.
we know that someone is looking at job and not a career, but we still hire them.
Right.
So the onus is on HR to know the difference between someone coming in because of a job. You have moments when you send out an ad for a position and people who don't even have the qualifications are applying, or it's way above, they're way above that pay scale.
Right.
A lawyer applying for an admin assistant job.
Well, I had a psychologist, a trained psychologist. I put out an ad for reception and they applied. And then they came and was requesting the salary of a psychologist.
Exactly. So you get the point.
Yes.
Not job. And then you're going to have high turnover when you recruit people who are not looking a career, but looking at a job because they're going to leave. They're unhappy. Right.
Unhappy and unfulfilled.
Unfulfilled. Some parents spending medical student fees and the child get to fourth year and drop out. Why do you think they drop out?
Right.
Unhappy.
Right. Nadine says, I would teach for food. A little oxtail and a little fried plantain. Your vocation is a calling, something you are passionate about. This is what I encourage my students to do. Figure out how to monetize your passion.
Absolutely. Well said.
Yes, which is something that I should touch on in terms of many talented Jamaicans could have a successful business, but because of culture and fear, they continue or refuse to upgrade their hustle to a meaningful career.
Yes.
So that is another side of, well, that is employing yourself really.
Yes.
But not identifying that what you are calling a side hustle could actually be earning you a tremendous amount of money because you're doing it in multiples.
Yes.
And you have not explored that area at all because you are secure in a job that you're not even happy in.
Yes, but guess what? The schools have a part to play in the sense that schools need to teach entrepreneurship.
Absolutely.
Right? And they don't. It's the basic chemistry, physics, bio, maths, English, literature, etc. What
We have
subject?
kind of deviated from just those things.
Yeah.
Mhm. Absolutely. Ava says, so proud of my two ICHS sisters. So happy to have met you back in the days. This discussion was needed and was so informative. Great topic.
Thank you,
Um,
Emma.
she also says complacency and sometimes fear. Follow your dreams and passion. How can you make, excuse me, how can you make a contribution to the world and making a living? We cannot live other people's dreams and aspirations. We have to be true to ourselves. Absolutely.
Agreed.
Yes. So is that it? Anything else? Anything else?
From me or from
Yes,
everybody?
from you.
No,
And any
I
other
think
questions before we're wrapping up now. So if there are any more questions, shoot them quickly before before myself and Dr. Jones signs off. Because as I said, we have the expert right here. She has several years of experience. And I don't see anybody out there that's looking for work that has anything to ask. When you spoke about the lack of technicians to repair equipment, that's a loss of expertise and dollars. Yeah. Yeah, we didn't touch on who would recruiter. Not recruiter, what do you call them again? Headhunters. Do we still have headhunters? What's the role of a headhunter? And how would somebody place themselves in a path of a headhunter? Or does the headhunter search to find what the company is looking for? You can't really make the connect to the headhunter. How does that work? I'm not familiar.
You can. I'm also a headhunter, but
Okay.
I specialize in recruiting CEOs,
Okay.
CFOs. I go on LinkedIn. I sort of figure out who's where and who's at Chamber of Commerce. So a headhunter does the homework, does the search.
Okay.
But if you want to get into the space of a headhunter where they know who you are, make sure that your profile is up to date. Make sure that you don't have anything on social media that could compromise your what we call brand. The brand is important. I remember recruiting a C-suite person, can't call the name. And then when in the middle of headhunting the person, in the middle of headhunting the person, I saw a picture of him. He's married with kids. He's supposed to be a pastor. I saw a picture of him at Carnival. He was in the middle. No, he was at the end, and the positions that can be very compromising. He was in that space, and unfortunately, as a headhunter, it sort of dulled my interest because I look at everything about you before I target you, right? Okay. As much. So be very careful about what you send out there if you want to.
Your social media footprint.
Absolutely.
We didn't also touch on, because I have had this issue quite a number of times. Your phone is your office phone, and the message, the image on the phone that you leave, right? That is also, sometimes you get some voice notes to leave a message, or the naked picture that is on their profile.
Or sexysusie.com.
Right, there, the name of your email address, bumper.com, or Sexy Susie, or Cute Lips. If you send out a resume, I had to speak to a young lady the other day. if you send out a resume and you are looking for work, first of all, you must remember that they're going to be calling back your number, the same number that you left on the resume. Secondly, if I call you and you happen not to have credit, I suggest you borrow money or borrow another phone instead of saying, please call me. A definite beside the head. And I've had that several times. Not once, not twice, not 3 times.
They're not ready. They're not ready to be hired. If you know that you could get a call from an employer, would you make sure that you have credit? Or as you said, make sure you have access to somebody else's phone? Come on.
Not only that, you set up for an appointment for interviews. You do not turn up.
Mm-hmm.
You do not call.
Mm-hmm. And
then the next day, if you can still come. No. No. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, those are red flags. Don't even try.
Those are red flags. And so if you're running late, which you really should try not to run late. So start out extra early. So at least you have a 15 minutes to cool down, to collect yourself, to look around, to look at the environment, to drink a glass of water, to calm your nerves, because you're going to be nervous. Look here, you're confident. You're going to be nervous. Andrea is asking a very good question, because you know Andrea is a very young retiree, to be shortly. She's saying, any ideas for working opportunities post-retirement?
Yes, Andrea. And in fact, there is an opportunity where persons are revisiting people who have retired. They actually have a terminology for it, and it's called phased retirement. So you may not necessarily want to work the 9 to 5 anymore, but you wouldn't mind working for a few hours per week. That is something that you'll find mostly in the retail industry. So supermarkets, they're looking for people who are more responsible, who will turn up for work, who, you know, who have had, is this Andrea I know?
Reynolds.
So like somebody like Reynolds now. Reynolds can be a store manager of a retail store, a supermarket. She's responsible. She's been a purser. She has supervisory skills, but she may not want to work a full week. There are opportunities out there. It's more cost effective for companies to look at people like you, because you're not going to be running down money per se. It's more being occupied and being utilized in a productive way that you'd find someone like Andrea looking for. Yes, there's some money involved there, but also she'll be giving you some level of responsibility, which you cannot find very easily amongst the younger persons. So for example, Walmart, that's what Walmart does, you know.
Okay.
And Target. And we in Jamaica need to do a bit of that. Go back to phased retirement.
Yes. But how do you get yourself in that space? Do you just send in your applications?
Absolutely, send it in. But the retail industry is more
it's gonna down now.
Yeah. When I say retail, I'm more talking about the supermarkets.
Right, okay.
And Rapid True Value, that type of the whole.
Okay.
Those are the stores that I'm referring to.
Okay, so she just send out before, and it's before, she don't wait until she's retired. Before she reaches retired, because she knows she would have had a date in mind. Yes. Because everybody has a deadline or an end date.
And she also has a customer-facing type of job, which is what the retailers would need. A customer-facing, responsible person like an Andrea. She has an look there.
Okay, great. Shelley says, what happens when you cannot monetize your passion to the level that gives you the money you need?
For Shelley, you may have to also look at hybrid working. So the hybrid working, as it relates to what pays the bills on a regular basis, but lessen your hours so that you can give more investment time into what you're really passionate about, because that's the only way you can build what you're passionate about, by lessening the time. So look back at how you spend your money. What are your needs each month? What are the nice to haves that you need to tighten your belt and do without until you build up the investment on your passion?
Kevin is asking, especially with Zoom interviews now, standard protocols should be in place as if it were an in-person interview. So as you said before, don't bother with the half clothes. Dress fully, just like how you would normally be on time and all of that, right?
Yes, correct. And also for the recruiter too, because you do have recruiters who are distracted. They're answering their phone during a Zoom interview. I had to slap somebody under the table when they were doing it, because we were in the same room, but distant, and he was on the other side of the table and we were interviewing a candidate. And he's on his phone when we're interviewing the candidate. Yeah. Up here is the phone and texting away. So it works both ways when it comes to Zoom interviews. The recruiter or the employer as well as the candidate.
Full attention.
Absolutely.
What are your thoughts on doing background checks by searching through their social media accounts?
If you have access to the social media accounts, I think it's important. It tells a lot about the individual, especially depending on the type of job that you're looking for them to be in. And I'll give you a quick example. There was a young lady who was a teller, and a client came into the bank and said to me, I need to talk to you about something. There's a lady I have as a teller who I know has a special social media account where she is winding up herself, and she is partially naked, singing and doing DJing. So she had DJing on the side, but during the day she was a teller. You have to search. You have to know what they're up to.
How she will say, well, is that a breach though of the company, because it's not a competing business? And I'll just say to you what my staff says to me. But it's my personal time, right? It's my personal time, and it's my passion. And what does that have to do with me coming to work tomorrow? Because I do my work good and it doesn't interfere with my work.
It probably doesn't technically interfere with their work, but it would interfere with your business.
The image.
Yeah, absolutely. Can interfere.
I would like for you to shout, stand out and ball it out. Because when I say it has to be convincing to say the same thing.
It can interfere with your business, and then your business can also be affiliated with whatever they're doing on the side.
Absolutely. Because in this video, they are not in your logoed items. Right. In the next video, but on the same page, they're in your logoed uniforms.
Yes.
Right? And so, as I say to them all the time, when you are representing a company, they're not going to say so and so, they're going to say the totally male girls then.
Mm-hmm. Because
it's now a collective.
Yes.
Right? Because they don't know your name, but then if you don't see out there without, let's say it's not on your page per se, but you are wearing company issue.
Absolutely.
It's now become, if it's one person do it, it's all 15 of us do it. And so for persons to understand that at all times, whether you are at work or not, you are still a representative of where you work.
Of the brand. You're the representative of the Totally Male brand or whatever company it is.
Absolutely.
Which is what the client said when he saw the lady.
It's a challenge.
Yeah.
It's getting better, but it's a challenge because persons still feel that I should be able to do in my personal life, on my personal time, what I want to do, no matter what. That's the general. Millennials.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's correct.
We understood that very early because the difference between now and then is that we didn't even do things for the company. We did things because of our parents.
Yes.
So we didn't want to be seen in a certain light because Joyce Marriott is going to hear and she is going to be so embarrassed or whatever. So really and truly, our mindset was we don't want to let down our parents. It's not like that today. No. It's very different today. It's about me and what I want to do and how, what makes me happy in spite of.
Well, they can become entrepreneurs and do that full time.
And not necessarily, because remember, people, listen, I did a TikTok and I'm what, 56, 57 this year?
You turned 57 last week, by the way.
57 last week. Oh. I did a TikTok. It was in a foreign language. And someone wrote me online to say that it was if I knew what the word meant. And I really didn't. And so even as an entrepreneur, people are still holding you accountable for what you do. Because people can refuse to do business with you because they don't like the way you conduct yourself. So you're still accountable, although you are earning for yourself because you still have to interact with people.
That's correct.
You don't want to turn off people. So, Sherry was saying personal versus professional life. But there's no really versus these days, Everything is intermingled, intertwined,
The thing, Shireen, is once you have a customer-facing type of business, it sometimes it's modeled.
Yes.
I'm a client and I walk into Totally Male and I see receptionist who is somebody I just saw on a social media thing, half naked or whatever. I'm going to look at Totally Male in a totally different light.
Or you want to pinch her on her bottom.
Possibly.
Because she seems open to it. You see, that's another thing. That's another thing, Based on how you conduct yourself, people assume and put you in a box. Mm-hmm. Not that they are right, I'm not condoning it, but I'm just saying you open yourself to certain things based on how people view you. So in order to just keep everything on a level playing field, you just have to manage it and be very careful about the things you do in your workspace and in your personal life because they do cross.
They do.
So my friend, expert, HR practitioner, and HR guru, I know you're a busy person, and I really appreciate the fact that, and we have a lot of persons saying, excellent conversation, points really needed to be discussed. This is a conversation that needed to be had. I just want to say thank you for sharing your time and talent. Thank you for joining Boss Lady. And it is, I admire you 1,000,000 gazillion percent because it is not an easy road. HR, it's not. And so as for someone who takes it up and is as passionate as you are with with this subject, it says a lot about your commitment to people development. And your personality is so suited for it. So focused on, constantly upgrading, self in many different ways. So I just want to say thank you. Thank you for the folks that joined us tonight. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you for having me, Sandra. I appreciate that.
You are so welcome, my darling. She's not only, there you go, Shelley. We are from Queens as well. Somebody was bringing us up from Immaculate, but we went from Queens to Immaculate. As a matter of fact, I followed her. She was my mentor when I was looking for what to do after school, because I really was not interested in university at the time. I was always business-minded, they can tell you, because she knows me from 11 years old. So I was always business-minded. So when I found out what you did and you came through it smoothly, I decided to walk in your footsteps. So that's exactly what I did. I went to Immaculate. Many people don't even know that Immaculate had a commercial, because when I have it on my bio, and when they are reading it, it's always so hilarious. They say Immaculate. They see the word commercial, but they say Immaculate Conception, because that's how their brain is trained to see the conception versus commercial. But Immaculate did have a commercial where it taught you the business side of life, principles of business, shorthand typing, that kind of secretarial stuff. So it started me out very early. I know, and the two of Uno came and nice up ICHS personality kind. Thank you so much, Ava. I really appreciate your kind words. Really appreciate it. Thanks everybody for joining. It was really, I learned so much. There's so many different areas that I'm not familiar with, that I am going to now research, because these things can be applied to my business. And I'm always looking to upgrade. But yes, because I have you in my corner. So, I am going to really ask you about these things some more, because really and truly, we are in a different space now. The truth is, I didn't even really think of doing the test online in terms of showing the skill. I brought them in, but really and truly, it's really not necessary. And it kind of was inconvenient for them to, get somebody to bring there and all of that. So I shall definitely tweet, and I will encourage those employers out there that, small business, large businesses, you have to shift. It's a new dispensation. Hiring is not the same as before. You have to look for different qualities. Watch this program again. Listen to the nuggets that Cassida dropped, and apply it to your business. And Cassida, is there anywhere online that if they wanted your services, they can reach you, because you do consultation? Is there any way that we can get in touch with you?
My email address is cassida.jones@gmail.com. Very easy.
Okay, so you can contact Cassida and hire her in terms of consultancy. And if you are someone looking to change careers, because you do that as well, right? You do speak to persons, and she did say she does do headhunting as well. So this is a time when you have to look out for you. You have to look out for you. You have to look out for your business. You have to stop wasting energy and time, because each time you have to recruit, it's money, because you have to retrain. I should know, because you have to retrain and start all over again. And many customers don't like new stuff. They don't like changes. And so to do it right the first time is the best way. So see you next week, same time, same place. Next week, we are going to be talking about the Jamaican diaspora, what impact they're having, what they want from Jamaica now, where they see us going, what input they have on the whole Jamaican experience. We're going to be talking to this Dunkley next week. So let us join me next week up from all over the diaspora. Have your input because Jamaica is our home. No matter where we go in the world, Jamaica is our home and we have to take care of it. So let us have that conversation next week, same time, 8 p.m. Jamaica time. Thank you so much for joining. Bye. Have a good week.
Bye, everybody.